Hello, Born Review Nation. Gabe.
Nick.
And we are here today to review a movie that was requested quite a few times. And then, Nick, you want to introduce that movie?
I love saying this name. Tumbbad.
That's why I teach you Tumbbad.
I don't even know what I'm saying. Right.
It being October, Halloween's this month, we asked for some different types of genre, and this was more of a horror movie or scary movie. So I was interested because it was our first first Indian horror film, and I have some thoughts on it. But as usual, I can't talk about things without spoilers. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, it's in my DNA. So the first 3 minutes will be before spoilers.
It came out last year, so it's okay.
You know what I mean? And then, just in case people that want to watch the channel say, okay, let me go check it out, and then I'll come back. But you guys will get a fair warning when it's time for spoilers. So, should we just give a quick synopsis of the movie?
Sure. So, just to start off with, if you're like my wife and she likes the not-so-long movies, then this is it for you because it's an hour and 44 minutes.
Right.
And, I mean, it gets started right away. They don't waste any time. Tumbbad, like you said, Halloween time. I would call it more of a thriller than a horror film. I'm not a big old tough guy, but I wasn't really scared too much. So there was definitely some creepy elements.
Right.
But they were kind of more cool than creepy the way they were presented. So Tumbbad is the name of a place, and it houses this great castle, which looks awesome from the outside. But there's a secret line underneath. And we start off with this creepy old lady. We assume it's a lady.
Right.
And, I mean, she is just like, there's something wrong with her. She has been alive for way too long.
Way too long.
And she's creepy looking. And this mother who is trying to win the favor of the lord of the castle, so to speak, and he's a really old guy. He has this coin. And she's been with this guy for 12 years serving him. She wants this coin and maybe his treasure. But before I get too into it, what is the overall theme of this movie? The overall theme, one word.
Greed.
Greed, okay?
Greed.
This is all about greed. And so the mother, you learn early on, that's not what she's about. She has given service to this guy for 12 years, being his maid, his servant, basically.
Right.
And there's a point where she makes the decision that, we just got to go.
Right.
Because he passes away. This is the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Right.
Pass away, we got to go. But she's got two sons, and one was like, no, let's go back and figure out that treasure. Let's go back.
Right.
And there's a lot more to that I'm glossing over, so it's not a spoiler.
Right.
But
that's so funny that you mentioned that. I got a different perspective from her because the only reason, like you said, this dude ends up dying early on. Okay, I'm trying not to spoil it, but okay, she was with him in his service for 12 years, and she was his mistress for 12 years, and it wasn't because the guy was Fabio, all right? He was no great-looking, Amir Khan, or what was that, the other guy from the video we watched the music video, the sexiest man alive.
Oh, Hrithik Roshan?
Yeah, exactly. He was no Hrithik Roshan. Okay, stop it. So she wasn't there out of love.
He was
she wasn't there out of love. She was there because she also had greed in her. She wanted that money. Now,
I don't see it that way.
There was something that happened when we talk about in spoilers that changed her outlook on it and perspective. But she still had greed in her too, and
I don't believe
that was my interpretation of it.
Okay, I disagree 100% because again, when the lord of the castle dies, she is ready to go and. There's other reasons why, obviously.
Right.
But she is ready to go and move on. And her son mentioned several times, let's go back. We can do it. We can take care of it. We can talk to this creepy person and figure it out. And she's like, no, just forget about it. Let's just move on. Right. If I don't care what it was. If I was your maid for 12 years and I saw that one coin the entire time.
Right.
I would have stuck around for a few more days and tried. Not just been okay, wash my hands of it and move on.
Well, I think
I would not call her greedy. Son, definitely greedy.
Oh, for real. And that was part of his character. But let's just wrap it up really, really quickly, non-spoiler. It's a horror movie or thriller, however you want to interpret it. There's horror elements to it. And again, it's based on this old legend, or what do you want to call it? Maybe it's a proverb.
Basically, there's this myth that there's hidden treasure.
There's this hidden treasure. This goddess had like 16, I think it said like 160 million children, godchildren, and but her first was her favorite, and her first was greedy. He wanted to take all the Hastar wanted to take all the gold and all the food. He got all the gold, but then the other children banded together and struck him down before he got the food. And mom ends up saving him because it's her firstborn, obviously. But now he's in prison. That's kind of like the preamble to it. But there's gold somewhere in this hidden castle. So this boy comes back after mom, you said, leaves years later, 15 years later, and he goes looking for the gold, and it leads him into an area where, you know, his greed is exploited, or how would I say, you know, he gives into his temptations, and you follow his story not just along the first 15 years, but even into his adulthood, and when he has his own kid, and now he's preparing his own kid. So I would even say generational greed, because he's preparing his kid to be greedy. Again, that's part of it.
Preparing maybe, but we'll get to that at the end.
Right.
But again, I feel like this story is all about greed.
Right.
Obviously. Now, we're into spoilers now. So the old lady that I mentioned...
Spoiler alert. After this, the spoiler alert. But before we say anything else, it was a great movie. Check it out. It's free on Amazon. You got to love the word free. Anytime you can do anything for free, why not?
Gratis.
If you have Amazon, if you have Amazon Prime, who doesn't have Amazon Prime? But, okay, it's free on Amazon Prime, and it streams on 4K. I love saying that. It looks so good on 4K. But...
Are you ready for this now?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really, really love this movie. I really do. Okay. I enjoyed it completely. And one of the main reasons I enjoyed this movie was because we have horror. I still call it a thriller movie. That is a suspenseful movie that's based on an element of horror that actually has a plot to it.
Right.
It has a serious foundation, and it has story tropes above that foundation. And again, this may be based on a real, myth story. It sounds like it with the whole god Hastar and whatnot. But these people who made the movie, the filmmakers, did a great job of expounding that story and focusing on one simple theme. Talking about teaching, right? Greed as that theme, and seeing how it damages so many different things. So there's an old lady, super old, probably 200 years old. She's been able to survive somehow, and she knows about this treasure. And so the son goes back when he's of age, and he's a grown man,
right.
And he sees that she's still kicking somehow, even though she's got a tree growing out of her. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you got to watch the movie to understand.
Yeah, those visuals
But basically, something happened where she wasn't being fed every day, so she was not as mobile, even though she wasn't too mobile as she was before. And so she was just stuck there, kind of like the whole Pirates of the Caribbean type thing with the barnacles. Tree grows out. She's ready to give up. She says, just burn me up and kill me. And he's like, but tell me the secret. And she's like, no, you don't want to know it. It's a curse. Don't worry about it. But she makes the mistake either because she's really evil and she wants to mess with him,
right.
Or what. But she says, definitely don't go down the well.
Right.
And so the thing I loved about this movie is you learn about this, but you don't get the whole picture. Right. And then he goes in and he gets some treasure, but you don't see him do that yet.
Right.
You just see later on that he comes back with a few coins and he's asking his friend, like, I owe you money. How much are these coins worth to you?
Right.
And I really love that element where we didn't get everything at one time. We got piece by piece, so that when we did discover what's below the well, for me, that was the best way to tell this story.
Right. And I think it was kind of like Bird Box in a sense, where for the longest time, we didn't see the boogeyman. Sometimes the boogeyman you don't see is the scariest thing. So they did that really well. And like you said, it's more of a suspense movie than horror. That's why, because you were on the edge of your seat for a long time. Like, well, what's in the well? Or how's he getting these coins? So that was pretty, not scary, but it definitely had you jumping on the edge of your seat.
Well, and I was too dumb to even think about it. I thought he just literally, he puts a bucket in the well and gets as many coins as he fishes out that time.
Right.
I was not thinking that there was more to it, which I should have. Maybe it was late at night. I have no idea. But maybe that's why I was even more excited to find out, there's actually a reason for those coins.
Right. And, I mean, the reason for the coins, basically, is that the son, Hastar, of this goddess, has all the gold. Remember, we mentioned that. So he has this pouch that he carries around all the coins in, and he has to go down there, and we're into spoilers now.
Okay, so first of all, he goes in the well.
In the well, right.
And I love how they set that set design. It didn't look expensive, but it looked legitimate, where it was, they call it the womb.
Right.
And it looked like the inside of what a womb would look like. It was all red and muscly and whatnot. And he goes in there. So keep going. I just want to give you that visual.
And when he goes in there, he comes across this god or demon, whatever you want to call it, Hostar, who has this gold pouch. So Hostar has all the money, but he has an everlasting hunger because remember, his siblings cast him down before he could get all the food. Yep. So all he wants to do is eat.
Hugely important.
So he distracts him with these wheat
it's like bread dolls.
Dolls, basically. And while Hustar's eating, he snatches some gold coins by...
he's got to open it up, and some just
patch,
constantly pop out,
because it's like never stops popping out.
Grab as much as you can until he's done eating, and he comes after you to eat you.
Exactly. And now you got to get out of that well before he catches up to you.
Climb that rope.
And it's now it's a chase, basically. So how greedy are you? If you just take 1 or 2 coins, you're going to be all right. But if you're trying to load up, he's going to finish that bread doll, and then he's going to come after you. So again, that's another, a level to that greed, okay? The greedier you are, the more in danger you put yourself. And you see that at times he's fine going down there. And then one time he comes back injured, which must have told you he got a little too greedy. He wanted way too many coins. So, in any event...
Was that the time he came back with 2? Because I remember one time he only came back with 2. One time he came back with like 16.
Yeah.
And the guy looked at him like 16, and you can see the look on his face like, yeah, it was...
But at that point, we still haven't seen him do this. We just know he came back, he was injured, he had the coins. And he had more coins this time. So now he's become affluent. He's become an important man in this town because he has these coins. And what I like... Here it goes again with my flaw, is that everyone in this movie is flawed. Spoiler alert, there are no good guys. Are you rooting for anyone at all?
No, and that's the one issue I have with this movie.
I love that part.
And we haven't talked about this, but I like to cheer for the good guy. I like to cheer for the underdog. And the main person we have, this son, I can't remember his name right now, the main person we have as a main character, he's a punk. He's greedy. He's greedy. I mean, he's not a good dad. He's not a good husband.
No.
All he cares about is getting what he wants to get.
Right.
And it's a theme of greed, so I excuse it. But I have a hard time where our main protagonist, I wouldn't even call him that.
He is
a greedy son of a gun.
But I think that's this again. This is more of a proverb or parable.
And he never redeems himself. Ish.
They're trying to tell you, be careful, cautious about greed. And like I said, everyone in this movie, to an extent, is greedy. Again, his mom embed this in him. At one point, she's chastising him about it, and he even says, well, how am I greedy? You're the one that was his mistress for 12 years, so that you could get this inheritance. Because she was worrying about the inheritance until, and this is what we didn't mention about earlier, her son dies. Now, that's what I'm a little confused about, was his younger brother, the son, when he died, was that just an accident that happened? Or was that because of the influence of Hostar? I don't know. Or the grandmother.
I think it was just an unfortunate accident. Now, I still don't say she's greedy, and this is why I say, because you remember the conversation one way. I remember that conversation with the son and mom a different way. He wants to feed the old lady, grandmother they call her. He wants to feed her at certain times, not because he wants to be grown up and be mature and be a young man. He wants to get the information to the treasure. He already knows about it.
Of course.
And he told her, like you said, you were with this guy for 12 years. Let's at least go back and get what's ours. And she said, no, don't worry about it. I saw it as he was a way for her to survive with her kids. She was feeding her kids. She had a place to stay. Once he died, and obviously once her son died, there's no reason to stick around. The place was cursed. You had the old hag, she called her. There's nothing to stick around for. And the son just kept pleading with her. And they're on the boat leaving, and she has to get in his face and say, stop asking me. We're not going to go back. I don't see her greedy as all. And she even said to him at one point, I wish you would have died and not the other one.
Right, which again...
I think she was annoyed with how greedy he was.
Right.
And it never left. And then we're talking about his son, right? We never are too clear. He gets some information, obviously, but it's not like he has a father-son talk with him.
Right.
But the son has an idea of what's going on because he's practicing with the loincloth and getting the coins or whatever. But once the dad sees, he can actually be of some use, Now you can come with me. Now I'll start talking to you. Now we'll have some bonding time. But at the end, when he has a chance to show whether he's greedy or not,
Right.
he doesn't take the money. He doesn't take the coins. He realizes, he sees it with his dad right there.
Right.
Greed has destroyed him.
Right.
I no longer want part of it.
Right.
Now, that son was not perfect, but I did like seeing how he at least learned from his father's mistakes, and he said no. Even though it killed me inside, I'm like, the coins are right there. The loincloth's right there. Take it.
Right. But, I think that the son looked at it, and I guess this is where our interpretations are different. Like, basically, I got my dad killed, okay? Because dad's been doing this for years, and if we had just been continued it, we would have been fine. Because, again, this movie spans over, 30 years easily? Because it was 15 years from when he was a kid, then another 15 years after in chapter 3, I think it was, because he had a son. So at least 30 years. He's been going down there and doing this, so I got him killed because the son's idea, and this was the twist, and I love this part about it.
Great.
The son's idea was like, well, why don't we just take the satchel instead of just opening up and taking some gold coins? And he says, if you do that, it's going to take too long to do that. So he says, well, just feed them more than one.
Have a bunch of dolls ready to go.
A bunch of
great
dolls.
Idea.
It's a great, in the kid's mind is like, if this guy has an everlasting hunger, give him all the food he can eat.
And why did the dad agree to it?
Because he was greedy.
Because he's greedy.
But so was the kid. The dad had never thought about that. His greed had never gotten there.
But didn't the dad already have a stash of coins?
He did.
And money?
That was another thing.
It
when
was
he
the
opens up
perfect
his
time
safe,
to retire and maybe get your own job, actually.
Right. And the reason though he said I got it. This is basically one last score. Is because the land was taken.
The castle.
They lost the castle. I think England had purchased it, or somebody from England.
India had become a free country from England, from Britain.
From Britain, right.
And so the guy, I looked as the guy was getting back. The politician was getting back at this shiesty guy who's got this money, and he keeps helping them out, and he doesn't really trust him. And so he's like, no, you lost your castle. Let's go into the government.
Right. So, now he's like, I can never go back there. I'm going to go for one last big score. But again, whose idea was that from the beginning? The kid, the 15-year-old kid or 13-year-old kid, however old he was, which was crazy to me. But what happens when you go down there with all the kids?
Great ideas that 13-year-olds have. Come on.
Exactly.
No offense. Come on.
Exactly. Come on, Dad. What were you thinking? I don't listen to my 13-year-old. Well, she's scary. I do listen to her, actually.
Daddy loves you.
Daddy loves you. But, what happens when you bring down more than one cake down there or more than one bread man?
Oh, and that was an awesome part where they just start, multiplying and coming down.
They literally came out of the walls because it's part of the womb. So the more food you bought, the more of them come out. More gold satchels, but now you have all these things around you. And there's rules to it. Like, as long as they stay within the circle of salt, they can't come in, or sand or whatever it was. Grain. They can't come in and hurt them. So they were stuck there, but they're looking at literally, I had to be 40 or 50 of them. And they're around that
was crazy. And then this is why, I like this movie. They thought out different details. They eventually, you're down there too long, the oil's going to run out of the lamp.
Right.
And you're going to have no light. And you are protected. Thank goodness they were protected.
Right.
But you got these demons literally like 2 feet away from you. You're trying to go to sleep or lay down. And he does those scenes are awesome. Lights the match. And then he can hear the sounds. And then the son does it. Ah! And he freaks out because the guy's right. That was crazy. But to the father's credit. Now, again, I'm still saying it was motivated by greed, not by the father's love.
Right.
He wanted to get that satchel. But he gets all the dolls, wrapped around him, and then he makes a break for it. The son's able to get it, and this is where they were geniuses, and they put the grain circles on the outside of the well, and then the outside of the door from that room, to where they would make sure at least no one else would be affected by Hastar, right? Him getting out, and I love that whole part. The dad got the satchel, even though he had turned into the demon person. And we understand how the hag became the hag or whatever.
Which they give it to you right at the very end. I love that part.
It was great. You had to work for it.
Right.
And then he's like, I got it. It's ours.
Now
and then the son just leaves it there.
Well, again, what's
going to happen when
somebody else stumbles up about
find that and say thank you very much?
Stumbles about it. You're right, but I think that the son saw his father's flaws and said, you know what? A, I cost him his life. B, this is where his greed has brought him. If I continue to be greedy, because again, if you're thinking about it from the son's perspective, he saw the safe, like you said, that the dad had in the floor. How much money could you need? How much more could you need? It's just, again, greed is only going to continue no matter how much you have. You can never have enough, kind of like Hostar's hunger. It could never be enough, right? Yeah. So that was kind of the message behind that.
And I don't blame the dad too much. I mean, that's quite a way to get some money. But if I knew that there was a guaranteed way to get some money and it was a little bit of sacrifice.
Right.
Now, I personally wouldn't be able to do it because I can't climb a rope to save my life. So there'd be no chance.
Oh, is that the only reason? Are you kidding me? Well, how about the demon you got to found off with the little doll cake or whatever?
Let's try it once. No, but I mean, I don't blame him for that. I mean, he was successful. I mean, think about that. How many times was he successful?
A lot.
He got out of that
a lot.
For 20 years or 15 years or whatever. But I really like this movie because a lot of horror/thriller movies that I've seen here in the U.S., they don't have a lot of story to them. They have scares, and that's great. They have some jokes, and that's great. And they have a decent villain, but there's really not much to the story.
Right.
This one was built on story, and then it had the scares wrapped around it, and it was teaching a life lesson. Right. I really, really love this movie. I'm ready for a grade. All right.
So am I.
So, Tumbbad. And I still love that whole part. I get the reaction with the coin. He's trying to entice the girl, the mistress. But I'm going to give Tumbbad easily an A-. Why an A-? Just because it was kind of a smaller film. It felt like a smaller film. I was a little confused at first, even though it came back around full circle at the end. I would have liked a little more character development besides just the dad. I get it was his story. Mm-hmm. But I would have liked a little more character development with maybe his wife and her point of view and what's going on. And maybe even a little more with the little brother and the mom before all that stuff happens.
Right.
But still, an amazing movie. I can see myself watching this again. Tumbbad, A-.
You know, I don't know if it was because of what I've seen prior. I think the last movie, the Indian film I saw, no, actually the last one was Gully Boy. But the last visually Gully Boy, right? The last visually stunning one we saw, Padmavat, this did not compare. Like you said, it was a smaller film. So I had a little bit of problem with the visuals. Inside the womb, when you look at the ground was like breathing. That kind of looked like CGI. For me, it's probably a B. And I said this when I did my review of Chucky. Man, I gave Chucky a C. But like you said, it wasn't scary, but what has been scary lately? The last scary movie I saw was The Conjuring. Horror films just don't do it for me anymore. For whatever reason, they don't really have me concerned about it at night. I can't close my eyes. Well, that was scary. Or, man, you know what I mean? Like, and I want that to happen. I haven't had that feeling, like I said, since The Conjuring. So it wasn't, I thought it was a pure horror movie. I wanted a pure horror movie. This was more of like you said, a thriller. So from that perspective, I've got to give it a B. But everything else, story was there, content was there, and I love the fact that they taught a lesson, greed, and then as usual, you know me, I root for the bad guys. This was one where there was no good guys, no protagonists. Everybody was the antagonist, and they all got their just due.
I compare this movie not because of the story, but because it was the way it was presented to A Quiet Place. Quiet Place I would not call horror, but there was definitely some scary elements to it that didn't scare me, but were still, frightening or creepy or whatever, where it's a simple idea, and they built a world around it. You have really good acting. It's not all positive, and then you have some kind of demon monster at the end who, is not 100% believable, but still good enough. To me, that's what Tumbbad is. And I loved A Quiet Place. I thought it was a nice, refreshing horror/thriller with some suspenseful moments, like the part where she's giving birth or whatever, and everything's going down. But really loved it. Thanks for the request. We love doing these reviews. We appreciate the love that you have for us with these reviews. Padmavat is our first review to get over 5,000 views.
Awesome.
So thank you very much. We know it's because Jody was in that video, but maybe we got at least 1,000 each.
Superstar of the crew. One thing I forgot to mention about this, I think that this is probably the very first Indian movie I could say I could have watched without subtitles, because the score, and I never used to pay attention to the score until me and this guy started doing videos, and he would really point it out. The score was like, that was horror. That was just in the music, you knew something suspenseful was coming on or whatever. So that alone told the story. So I'm like, you know what? That score was really good. I don't know who the composer was, but hats off to you. And that's how it's done. That's
it. All right, well, make sure you subscribe if you like this, and check out our Patreon information below. And until next time,
happy Halloween.